Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Scenes. My name is Andres Cuervo, and this is a space where I interview my friends. We have conversations about life, about their careers, especially creatives and people in the film industry. And today I have the visit of Haley Leary, great friend. We worked together in a couple of projects, and I'm very excited about this conversation because there's a lot of things that we share in common. Some very deep stuff, but at the same time, I love to just share about a journey. You know, it's not the destination that we're gotten to, but it's also the journey that is important, and we can learn so much from that. When we were talking about your background earlier, to me it was like very interesting that you are an actress, but it wasn't something that you desire throughout your childhood, like from forever.
No.
So I want to know a little bit more about your background, like the different things that you've done before you get to this part.
I think, you know how everyone's like, what did you first want to be when you grew up? And I think the first thing I could remember wanting to be was a teacher, right? I wanted to be an elementary school teacher, I think. Yeah. And then quickly moved to nursing because I think anything nurturing, anything to like take care of, insert, you know what I mean? But I had a film teacher in college. I went to GGC. It was like
You were doing your AA or something, like before nursing?
Yeah, well, it was, I was kind of like, I was doing the thing I was taught to do. I left high school, now you go to college. Okay. Right? Yeah. So I was like, okay, yeah, like I had basically gotten, I didn't officially take the test, but I would have passed had I done it. I know it. But I had, my senior year was spent going to half days at a trade school that was for CNA. They did like nursing, automotive, early childhood development, cosmetics, stuff like that. So I was like, I'm a white chick in Gwinnett County. I'm gonna be a nurse. I got it. So a lot of my friends were nurses. I love them. Nurses, teachers. They never get enough credit. Like
not enough credit and not enough money.
Not enough credit and not enough money at all. So I wanted to do that. And I by 17 had the credentials to go take my CNA exam. Sorry, Dr. G, I didn't do that. So she was very much like, if you're in this class, I need to know that you're going to take the exam afterwards. Like, this is a free education for the exam. And, the depression got in the way, and, like, life changes and everything happened. And I had done my freshman year in college, and I was going into my sophomore year. I'm not sure if I even had enough credits to be considered a sophomore. You know what I mean? But I was like, I'm going to do a film class because that'll be easy. That'll be my reprieve from everything else. I'll get to watch movies and stuff like that. And then after a few classes and being in that for a while, I dropped out of an art class because, like, the first time I was in there, he was like, yeah, in the 70s when I was huffing paint and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, okay, I'm really trying to, like, learn something. Like, I want a reprieve class, but also not, like, just like your adventure through the 70s, So I chose film, and he pulled me aside one day. I don't even remember his name, honestly. I disassociated a lot because of trauma and stuff like that. So there's certain things I just don't remember. But I don't remember his name. He asked me what I was doing in college. It was like probably the first adult that ever asked me that, instead of being like, you're in college, good. Like,
so that was like the teacher showing some interest of like what is going to be your path.
Yeah, like, you look bored. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing here?
I got it.
So I asked him, I was honest. I was like, honestly, dude, I don't know. Like, I'm here because that's what you're supposed to do, right? And he kind of was real with me and was like, I think you need to take a break until you realize what it is you want to do. I was in a terrible relationship. I was like, I had a test in my life to being this cool tattooed nurse that was just who was going to marry this guy who didn't treat me well, and because marriage is not happy. That's how, you know, I was believed, you know, or raised to believe things. I dropped out of college and didn't tell my parents or anyone of authority for like 6 months, right? I was still leaving the house and they assumed I was going to my classes, but I was trying to figure it out because, you know, this guy had made a good point. I was like, yeah, like, your class is the only one I'm showing up to, you know, it's to watch these movies.
And he's like, drop out completely.
Yeah,
not even this
like,
class.
Yeah,
take
even,
a break.
He's like, not even my class. I don't want to see you until you're a fully formed human, and that doesn't happen until you're 25. And so, I dropped out of school. I started making some pretty heinous decisions as far as what to do. I was not in the best environment as far as nurturing healthy choices and positive, you know, growth and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I just kind of was floating through life, like literally and metaphorically, like just kind of cruising. And then Crate Clips was my first job at 15, like first on paper official job. And then I did like serving jobs, retail clothes, cell phones, cars, everything like that. Like I worked at a Volkswagen dealership. I worked for AT&T. I helped. I washed people's hair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when I was 21, I was like, you know what? I was living with my mom at the time. Stuff wasn't going too great. You know, my mom's a fantastic person, but it wasn't working for me. And so I was like, I'm going to go live with my dad. And I moved in with my dad in this double wide trailer that was converted into like a house thing. And I changed my phone number, my address, and I got a new job in the same weekend. I was like, I'm going to be a better person. I don't even know how. It was like doing what you did in your early 20s and going down to East Atlanta Village, and I was like a little village rat, and I was just hanging out with my friends and like at the graveyard, and I ended up later, a few years later, getting a job at the Earl for a little while down there, and I met a DJ who was a friend of mine, and through just hanging out, I ended up on a Young Thug music video set, right? It's like my friend does videos and da-da-da-da. And up until that point, I was just like, I don't know, I'm just living life. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I kind of fell out of nursing and everything like that. Well, I ended up, I think I was 23 or 24. Yeah.
In that music video?
In the music video, yeah.
And that was your first appearance in front of the camera?
First appearance in front of a camera, besides maybe, No, that was it, because, the second one, like, when I got into hair modeling, was, like, a little later. But, yeah, so I did a Young Thug music video to the song I'm a Stoner. And it was a very fitting intro to me into the film. They were like, oh, yeah, we heard. So my friend Lee Coleman, who's an amazing person, and Tim Doss, who I always tell people, he's an OG, like...
Oh, yeah, Tim Doss is like a nerd inside, like coming out of this beat.
Yeah, and he's an OG friend and supporter, and anytime I do something that's relevant or like that hits the airwaves, Tim pulls the footage for me and makes sure I have it. But yeah, so he was there shooting, and it was one of those things that afterwards I was like, I'm in show business. You know what I mean? Okay. They recut and made it a completely different video, so I wasn't. But like I realized I kind of had a taste for it then, right? And like you can relate as far as depression and it just kind of being this like thing that comes in and out of your life, you know, just kind of like that weird friend that like, what have you been doing all this time? And like, I'm here to rock your world. And you're like, cool. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew I had fun doing that. And I remember the day I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Whether it's one of those things that I think I'm grateful And it benefited me to remember this day because, like we were talking about, a lot of, especially actors, I'm not speaking for people that are in camera, sound and crew and stuff like that, because I don't think a 2-year-old's going to be like, I want to be a sound guy when I grow up. You know what I mean? That's not as people see the people on the screen. They're like, I want to do that.
Yes.
So there was a lot of people that I work with that grew up in film. They grew up as kid actors and in theater and doing this. I didn't even do theater in high school. I did theater in middle school because all of my friends who also played sports, I played sports for like 18 years.
Okay.
So I did basketball was my favorite sport. Played that for 15 years. Awesome. It was an easy class, like I said. Film. I was like, I got in here because I'm lazy. I don't like doing stuff. I don't like doing the same thing every day. Yeah. So I did that class because my friends were in it.
I'm thinking that you could have continued a sports career, for example, but you just switched to do something else.
I made the high school team. I could have gotten scouted, but my brain was literally people pleasing. I was like, I don't want to take up this space because I don't have the passion for this. And someone else could have my spot, whether it be the bench or otherwise, to get scouted and follow their dreams. So I don't need to take up this space.
Yeah. No, do you consider that almost like self-sabotage?
At the time, everyone thought it was. Okay. Everyone was like, what is Haley doing? Like, because I was a point guard and a shooting guard. Those were fun positions for me. I to this day, I love basketball. I love watching basketball. But I don't know, like, people will tell you, even especially in sports, there's like there's a political game too, and there's certain things and pressure that I felt I got such a dose of that as a kid from just how I was raised and grown up in circumstances that I didn't want to get yelled at anymore. Like, and it's just the nature of the beast with sports. It's loud. People aren't always mean when they're yelling, but it's an aggressive, intense environment. And I think I was tapped out at a young age just because of everything. And so I think it was one of those things that I don't know if it was my mom first or someone else, but I told them, like, I didn't want to stop searching for what I wanted to do in life until I cried happy tears. Because I had never felt that sense of joy. Like, even when we were kids, like the one time we got taken to Disney World by my grandparents, every day at like 4 or 5 o'clock, I was in tears for sensory overload. I wasn't able to enjoy it. It was too much. So I didn't know what that happiness felt like, that burst, you know? I always like pictured your bubble being burst as like a bad thing. I wanted to like burst my own bubble of happiness, you know, and let that be the cause of my tears. So I was on Model Mayhem. And, for all of you Gen Zers that don't know, we paved the way. We met up with strangers online. It was the Craigslist of modeling.
That was exactly what I was going to say. The Craigslist of models.
Like, do you want to shoot in my backyard? I have a pool. Like, you know, that type of stuff. But I got hit up by my friend Hassan Abbasi, who he's an amazing cinematographer. And his partner, she's an amazing fashion designer. But I hit him up. He was doing a seniors video at SCAD. They were a senior...
Like a graduation
like
project.
Their thesis video.
Yeah, your thesis video.
Yeah. Their thesis video. Her name was Leah Rama, I think. And she works for Michael Kors. She was doing stuff for Adobe. But her fashion was inspired by like 15th century art, right? And so I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, and it was held together by things like magnets and everything like that. So he hits me up on Eminem and is like, hey girl, we're shooting this senior thesis video at SCAD. So in my head, I was like, okay, it's at a school. It's at an actual place at least, like fingers crossed. So I get there and it's me and this other girl, and like, I'll have to send you the video because he actually made like a director's cut and submitted it to place, but it was really cool. And I spent like 7 hours doing this video with them. And I was getting charged. I was like pumped up. I was like, this is cool. Like, this chick made this guy's making this. Like, I'm here just like acting like I know what I'm doing. And then I had my brother's graduation. Is kind of relevant, but not. But like, so immediately went from that to my brother's graduation at Tequila High School in Gwinnett County. And for those who don't know, SCAD is downtown Atlanta. So doubled 45 minutes back up north. And then because of like doing music videos with Tim, I met a guy named Video Raheem who was doing a music video for this local rock group. At the time, they were called the Biters. And I had gotten cast. I worked at the Earl, and I was a chick with tattoos.
Yeah.
So they needed people for the video. So I had agreed to be in the video. So went from SCAD, did that for 7 hours, went to this graduation.
To the music video.
Went back to the downtown to the music video until like 4 a.m, right? 2 completely different vibes.
Yeah.
And everything. And you would think like exhausted by the end of the day, right? No, dude. I felt like I was like, what are drugs? Like, this is it. Like I felt like I had like, you know, I had done stuff to get me amped. You know what I mean? And so I called my mom. She was an early riser at the time. I knew I could call her. She was going to be awake. And so I called her and I was crying and she was like, what's wrong? Da, 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 da. And I was just like, I'm so happy. I found what I'm going to do. And I'm going to be an actor. Dead silence on the phone.
Wow.
It was...
She thought it was gonna go full into nursing.
Oh, yeah. I'm going back to school. I figured it out. I didn't go to Full Sail. I didn't go to SCAD. I didn't have the
formal training.
No, I didn't have the knowledge to know that was even an option. There's no, like... You grow up on food stamps. There's no Hollywood and doing stuff like this. Wow. Like, I would even see people doing stuff like this and be like, no way. Like, there's no way I could do stuff like this, you know? Flash forward to, like, even just last year, I'm, like, sitting in a makeup trailer with Pierce Brosnan. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. And talking to him about his abstract art. And he's showing me, and we're talking about just art, not even acting.
Yeah.
Or we're both doing the thing. It's like, that's how I find my people is like, what are we talking about even when we're producing for other people? Like, I want to get to know like the ins and outs of you because that will make me understand your art more. You know what I mean? And I'm here for that. I'm here for the art and to create and to connect and to feed people because I love it.
Yeah, because those influences that we have from art, from those conversations, even from the things that we've read, the kind of music that we listen, they form the person that we are. It's not just what we do. There are all their influences that are the same time.
One of my biggest regrets growing up, and this was just because of outside influence but you know, past traumas of being turned off by the idea of reading, right? I grew up around a lot of smart people, like as far as just brains, right? None of the adults in my family really went to college besides my grandma. She went back when she was in her 30s, but my parents aren't college graduates. No one in my family, like we're trade people, you know what I mean? But anytime I would go in as a kid and try it and like sound smart or be like, I remember one time I used the word audacity once when I was a kid. Yeah. Because I was like, oh, I'm about to blow the roof off this room. Like... Listen, I was hanging out with my friend and she had the audacity and like, because they weren't used to me, like, you know, I got ripped on, man. The whole day it was like, oh, Haley, was it the audacity? Like, you know, like all this stuff. So in my head, I was like, well, I'm not even gonna like, you learn these from books and this just gets me bullied and like books are just gonna like, you know, books equals bully. And like, so I didn't, right?
Okay.
Luckily, you know, I met my boyfriend now who has gotten me into, I think we've listened to like 10 audiobooks together. Like, you know, I love you, Pat. Thank you. But I don't know, like I was so scared of not being liked and being bullied that I stopped myself from like growing and gaining knowledge out of the perception of others. And like one of the things I think I've gotten from film is like, kind of like diseases, there's so many different types, and in film there's so many different types of people that have so much to offer and everything like that and like things like that. So I'm like, no, like I'm not weird. The right people just haven't seen my stuff yet. You know what I mean? Like there's niches. We're in a world where if I even thought about trying to absorb everything that everyone's creating, I'd implode. You know what I mean? But the beauty of that is the reason behind it. Everyone has such different interests in everything like that. So you could be like, this is how I made this glass, and here's my step by step. And like, you're going to have millions of followers, you know, based off of like, oh yes, we all drink out of glass. You know what I mean? So I think the freedom I got from finding my way into this industry, because I've done PA work and everything. I act and write, but like, is just the freedom to create. Like, I'm not gonna get that when I was selling cell phones. I'm like, you know what would be cool is if we like, you know, put this like on a projector on the wall and got people in, and like it was a short film using your Galaxy S5. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that would, I never had those thoughts. The most thinking I did was like while I was communicating with someone. Otherwise, I was just spinning around like on whatever chair we had. You know what I mean? I didn't feel motivated in any sense of the word. And I think this is, for me, the only industry that makes sense, because it's going to be something different every day. And I can tell someone's story who is not going to get it told otherwise, you know?
And it's like you said, one day you were shooting a project in Scott, and then you went to graduation and you shoot a music video, and these diversities. For example, when I first met you, it was on a set in a horror film, a very particular scene, you know. But then the next time I met you is at a comedy short, you know, that you were a Starbucks kind of barista. And I was like, wait a minute, I thought she was into horror and like gory stuff, but she can be so funny. And it was like cracking up. It was such a cool, like different stuff.
That was fun.
And the polars that you can gravitate, you know, it's like serious drama, you know, horror stuff, but then you can also be funny, explore things about yourself, project yourself in different ways.
There like it ranges, because I don't know. I guess it comes from being, and everyone can relate in some degree to being labeled or put in a box. And for actors, it's typecasted. For other people, it's like, I'm only going to be lower management or whatever. You know what I mean? But like, I've come to this realization throughout self-discovery, not even this industry, but just aging and realizing that like, I put myself in a box more than anyone else, because I've made the assumption of what someone else is thinking about me through anxiety. I've already just decided their opinion on me. If I go home and I'm like, oh, I did this wrong, because they think it's weird, because they think, I'm speaking for them. And that's not true. Like, they might have thought like, oh, that was like the coolest thing ever. Like, I got this and this from this interaction. Like, I walked away feeling better about myself, and and I'm over here feeling worse. For what? Such a waste of energy.
Especially when you have, you know, that constant mindset of I have to please others, you know, and I have to keep the peace. And I'm a person who, it's hard to have your own opinion and be strong at your own opinion, because you're always kind of shifting so that others can be pleased. And so imagine you come with all that in your mind, added with this, and it's just like a recipe for craziness.
Oh yeah, no, it's I call it analysis paralysis, because when those two collide, you end up doing nothing, right? Because you haven't taken the time, for me, or I should say, I haven't taken the time to decide what really makes me happy or what I want. And what I have decided, though, is what the person in front of me thinks, right? So I'm going to watch their body language and their facial expressions to be like, oh, did I say the right thing? Did I make them laugh? Are they comfortable? Like, am I good enough? Like, do I have enough shine on my ego for them to notice me? When at the end of the day, like, I don't think any of that matters, like, for me. Like, that's where I get to where I make no decisions. I sit stagnant, because I don't know what I want. I know what they want. But when that doesn't align with how I know how I feel in my gut, everyone does. Like, when it's with the inevitable coin toss, people do that not because they're going to choose what the coin lands on, because as soon as you flip that coin, what you want it to land on.
Okay.
You shouldn't go by what it lands on. You should go by your gut feeling when it's in the air. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And people will be like, that's stupid. But don't take the advice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. People say first impressions are very important, especially when you're an actor, when you're in media or whatnot. First impressions can also be very delicate and very dangerous in the sense of what the expectations are.
Yeah.
And when people meet you, when they see you and they see you full of tattoos, they might have an impression of like, oh, she is, very like hardcore.
Oh,
and whatnot, and not approachable.
She's going to blow cigarette smoke in my kid's face.
Not approachable. And then, somebody gets to meet you and is like, oh, she's super nice and very different.
Yeah.
And she relates to me and she can, people might see actors and think, oh, they have it. They make tons of money. They have it all figured out. She's pretty. She's
at every camera.
She's pretty. She's talented. She's working, especially when people go just by what they see in social media, when the reality could be very different from what we perceive in that first impression.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, it's been, since social media was created, we're only going to, most of the time, post the good news, right? Or we're in an era where, and I don't want to say don't post things like, post your truth, post what you want, it's your page.
Yeah.
None of it's necessary. It's social media. It's not here because it's necessary. It's here because we're humans and we want to connect and we're bored, and this is how we find entertainment. But I think that, there's a balance, right? So there's an era of people posting like their breakdowns and crying and all this stuff. And that's healthy in a way of, there are people out there that are going to feel like less alone and to connect to it. But there's also this thing that I've noticed, true crime in and of itself. Like, it's like you're getting that boost in your brain by the craziness of someone else's situation. Or like, oh, like this person's mom slept with their boyfriend and da-da-da-da-da. And like now they're crying online about it. Like, let me share that with someone and be like, what would you do in this situation? It's, John Quinones doesn't even have to write a show anymore. Like the whole what would you do thing, you just have to go online. But I do think that it's a teeter-totter things.
Yes.
Is that what it's called? A teeter-totter.
Yeah.
You post your successes on social media because we need that instant gratification and that boost of the likes and this and that. But also the reason what I realized is I've doubled up on posting, like, sometimes it'll be 2 months before I post on my actual page, but I'm posting every day on my stories because you're getting more communication through your story.
It seems like it's more intimate, I guess.
It is because people will feel comfortable when they're responding. It's not a comment for everyone to see. They're responding directly to you.
You're right.
Right?
You're right. Yes.
So I've kind of done the thing, I've started to realize, like, you got to do both. You got to post and post on your stories because that engagement that you're craving is going to come from both. But I don't think the work is going to necessarily come from my posts. I think it's going to come from my stories because I've had people hit me up and be like, hey, do you want to collab? Because it's not like them. It's almost like the gum in class, right? When you give someone a stick of gum, you're like, don't tell anyone where you got it because then everyone's going to want to collab with them. So you have good photographers that will go into your DMs instead of, hey, do you want to collab? Because then everyone's going to see that and think that person will collab with everyone.
Yeah.
So I think that you have to have a healthy balance. Be honest about your victories and what, like stuff you're doing like this is amazing, right? Because you're creating a platform for people to not only, post their product and their projects and everything like that, but you're giving them the opportunity to show themselves. You know what I mean? And not, because even this is like curated in a way, right?
And it's the different parts of ourselves, because that's the other thing for the audience is you can watch this with the understanding that that's just a part of who they are. And that's the part that they're making public.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that they're only that. And then we come to judge people just by that.
The filter that I put on when I do stuff like this is not so that I'm changing who I am. It's so that it's palatable for more people.
Got it.
So like I love kids, right? So there are certain things that I have done throughout my career that I don't want someone to be able to look back and be like, oh, I would never let my kid around them.
I see.
Because children are great. Like, in the film industry, that can be tough to work with kids. It can be tough, just the time constraints. And also, kids are kids. Like, they're not supposed to be in these tight constraints and everything like that. But, you know, I do put a certain filter on. It's not everyone else's responsibility, or they shouldn't have to digest my completely unfiltered self all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's my responsibility and my therapist's responsibility to digest that person. Like, you know what I mean? But like, I want to be able to have a balance on my social media presence of the successes and the failures and the everything in between, because there are people that will have like their personal Instagram page and their work Instagram page. And I totally get that. But as an artist, my personal life is where my art comes from. So it doesn't necessarily make sense for me to separate the two.
Yeah.
I understand that for some people that are maybe in a normal 9-to-5 type kind of setting, and then they have like a crazy side gig, you know, that might not look good for their Roth IRA clients or whatever, you know. I don't even know. That's the thing. They're like, we don't have a Roth IRA.
I do. Man.
Yeah. What's that? But yeah, like I post stuff online that's like, I post a lot of cooking stuff and art stuff and everything like that. And I used to post just a ton of sad stuff, because for me, it was almost like I was throwing out a sort of signal as to like my sad signal. If there's anyone else out there that's feeling this way or has experienced this, like maybe we can talk. Maybe I'll feel less alone. Maybe you'll feel less alone. I feel like what's the saying? Comparison is a thief of joy. You know. So if I'm constantly comparing myself, which is going to happen if you're a human and all you're doing is scrolling. What are you doing if you're not comparing your life to? You're not just sitting there being like, oh, that's good for them. Like, that's not a human thing. That's robotic, you know.
There are seasons in your life, I believe, that you don't have the tools to articulate what you're feeling, what you're processing, at least not in the right way, and it's not healthy, you know. But not everybody comes to that realization by themselves. Yeah. And to me, I had that experience of like 2 years out of social media, which in my position for my work, it could affect me a lot. But it was in that balance of like, what do I treasure more? The process that I'm going through right now and trying to get to the other side, or trying to, you know, accept these things, or being more busy doing work. And so I had to make the decision in like no social media for 2 years, until I came back from India and Nepal with my friend Josh. And that trip alone helped me open in a different way and share my experiences in a different way. So for the first time, I shared some of these deep personal, you know, challenges and struggles that I was going with. And I had a mixed response to that. But I feel like after that, it broke
especially
something.
being male, right? Like, you don't get that safe space to be like, yes, you should feel this way, which is messed up, like in its own right. Because if I go to Reddit or somewhere like that and I'm like, dear diary, and like today I was feeling melancholy with a side of sad and a dose of this isn't fair, and then listed out all of the reasons, there would be so many people like, girl, yes, like, speak your truth. Like, you know what I mean? But a guy it doesn't have that accessibility and that freedom and that respect that I would get being not only a female, but a white female that's like, my feelings are hurt. You know what I mean? And it's not, my boyfriend cries all the time, and he's not getting mad that I say that. Like, I think it's a strength. Like, and he does too. I think being able to be vulnerable and be true to how you're feeling is a strength, and fighting against the norm of like a boys don't cry. You know what I mean? That's not fair.
And I think that's not only changing in the public arena, that's also changing in how we are accepting that and we're exposed to that. there was a time where, like, I don't know if to me, the pandemic was like a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
So anything that was great, it magnified those great things. But anything that was not great, it also magnified those things that we were clinging for, those addictions that we had deep inside, those frustrations,
it was
those
a double-edged
fears.
sword for a lot of people.
Yeah. And so what I think is, through that, we understood a lot of people did open up through the pandemic because of that almost like fear of the unknown, what's going to happen. And I think after that, there was a period with like, another person talking about mental health, another person talking about needing therapy.
But you have to sit with yourself.
It's not until you experience that you're like, dude, this is not a fad. Like, this is a real thing.
Yeah.
You know, I never had a panic attack until I had it. And then I realized, whoa, I'm not in control.
How old were you when you had your if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So the first panic attack, I was about 41.
Wow.
I never experienced that before, like hyperventilation. Wow. Imagine.
So crazy.
Hyperventilation, like losing control of my movements, wanting to scream, you know, and it happened when I was on set, you know. And so for me, it was like all the circumstances around it, but it was a wake-up call that my body was saying, you need to stop. And you need, it's like your body can tell you when it's time to, you know, reset.
Yeah, there was this thing I saw that said, I'm going to paraphrase, but it was along the lines of like, if you don't stop and give your body the rest it needs, it will stop for you and it won't be at an opportune time. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So I, like, you know, I've struggled with panic attacks for literally as long as I can remember, which is kind of crazy to think about. Like being a kid and realizing like, oh, I'm getting taken to the doctor at like 8 years old. And, you know, my dad, who doesn't have a concept of mental health, is just looking at the doctor and being like, she won't stop crying. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, throw a pill at it, you know, and that's what they were doing. But like, I had done a Tim McGraw music video, right? And then doubled back, didn't really sleep, because I drove back the same night from outside of Nashville, and then I was supposed to fly to Chicago or New York for a hair modeling thing, right? Like, and it all sounds glamorous. I was getting paid like $500 for the weekend. Like, it wasn't anything crazy. Back to like, actors don't make a lot of money. Like, the industry has just since then. But I had a full on like panic attack, breakdown, dry heaving under a hair dryer at the salon for prep for this thing, right? And luckily,
was it coming out of nowhere? Like,
it was
or you
exhaustion, not eating, anxiety, everything like that. I was trying to do too much and self-medicating and everything like that. And luckily, at the time, one of the hairdressers, his name is Brandon, super grateful even to this day that he had the wherewithal to come over, and he was like, listen, I have teenage daughters. This looks like something that one of my daughters goes through, and like, you're probably you're tired, you probably haven't done this and this and this. I ended up not being able to go on that trip, right? And because of that, I wasn't really booked on any other shows for that company because it was a liability, right? Which I don't blame them, you know. I mean, I kind of do, because they hired models that were also like super shiesty and kept hiring them. But mine was a sickness, you know. And it was one of those things that it was super shitty that it happened, but at the same time, it kind of, I don't know, I was grateful in the way that someone else saw it, you know, because for years I was dealing with it by myself. I was going and taking hot showers like 4 times a day for my panic attacks. And like, I probably had thousands at this point, you know. But it kind of made me realize that like, oh, there is, with Brandon coming up to me, like, oh, there are adults that know what this is. And at the time I was an adult, but I wasn't, because I didn't know how to cope, and I wasn't given the tools to cope. Age-wise, I was an adult, but mentally, I felt like I was still 14. You know what I mean? Because I didn't get the tools that I needed to make rational decisions in moments of stress or exhaustion and stuff like that. So it just all kind of came down in on itself. And
I believe for some people, they can go back and pinpoint like a specific situations or specific, traumas that they experience that are triggering these things. For me, it wasn't really like that. So it was hard to explain. But then I look at my dad struggling with depression, struggling for many years. He even wrote a book about his journey and his struggle.
He said he wouldn't get out of bed.
Yeah, he wouldn't get out of bed. And then I went through a long season where sleeping was the only way for me to disconnect from all those voices, inner voices, for all those feelings, everything that was going on, the decisions that I was making, sleeping. And when the pills were not enough, then taking NyQuil as well, just to feel numb, Then I realized, my dad did talk about his process and having lack of serotonin as a neurotransmitter. So there is also a biological component. So it's not everything necessarily has to be trauma induced, or sometimes there's a biological component that you have to take into account and treat it also as a biological component. So I had to go to a psychiatrist and get medicated, and it wasn't a one-time thing. The first time the medication gave me side effects that were not good for me, and so I had to switch to another one, and that's a process as well. You don't switch right away. It has to be gradual.
And then try something else.
Same with so that was with the psychiatrist, but with therapy I went through 5 different people before I realized, okay, this is going to help me.
So
it's almost like dating, kind of.
It is. No. It's not even kind of. It fully is. Like, you should 100% date around before you choose a therapist, because there were people, like, I tried going to different therapists and stuff, and I was just like, whether it be an age thing, I was talking to a guy, I checked myself in somewhere. I was like, you know what? I need to be like watched for like 72 hours. I need to figure out the root cause of this anxiety. Maybe if I'm in a place where a doctor can see me and like all this stuff. Well, it got to be more discouraging because the place that I went to and the doctor that I was there was not a good person. So it got like, my doctor was giving me shots and molesting me in my sleep. You know what I mean? So I legit, like, and people say, like, how you were in your sleep, how did you know? I'm like, well, it was one of those things, like, the next day you go up, and it was like Girl Interrupted. Like, there is a window, and people line up, and you go up and get your medication. And like that.
Like in the movies.
Yeah, like in the movies. Like, they got that part right. There are lines and windows that give you medication. So, granted, as a chick, you should always know, if a male doctor is coming in to give you an injection in your butt, a nurse should be there. Someone that's kind of an always thing. It's like a kind of like a patient advocate thing. But I noticed after like the 3rd day, like, there was never a nurse there, and it was always at night. Like, I didn't know what I was getting. I was kind of confused because I was like, I'm lucid. Like, I'm not having a panic attack. I'm not distressed. I'm not having trouble sleeping. But I realized, like, there was Thorazine in the injections he was giving me. And Thorazine is an antipsychotic for people with schizophrenia. And
so it numbs you, knocks you down. Yeah.
You're out.
Okay.
You're out. Like, within 15 seconds. You know what I mean? And so I was getting out, and I was like, but how do I know? And when I went up to get my medication, the doctor was there, and he handed it to me, and he proceeded to say that, and like, I'm going to be honest with people so they know, like, what I had between my legs was gold, and it shouldn't be shared with anyone. And that's when I knew.
Oh, wow.
That I was like, this was not for me. You know what I mean? So I was trying to get out of there, right? The system works against you. It got to the point where 2 orderlies separately pulled me aside and they were like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you still here? And I was like, I don't know. I can't leave. Like, I'm on a hold now and I can't, like, I put myself in here. Why can't I get out? This is what they said to me. Just play by the rules and you will get out of here. But, like, you shouldn't be here. And so when the staff is telling you stuff like that and you're literally like, okay, I guess I just need to shut my mouth and go quiet and everything like that. When you experience that in your early 20s, anytime before 25, before that cognitive lobe is developed in your head, you're like, okay, being quiet and being complacent will get me where I need to be. I don't want to make waves. I just need to exist. And when you get into a field like this where like you get to make choices, talk about a mind F of like where you're at, because you're like, what are choices? Like, I was just like, the only choice I had was to just exist and to kind of cruise through life. So like this was almost like a life-saving kind of thing for me, is being able to connect with people that I realized like were also here for similar reasons, because nothing else was making them happy besides being able to make stuff and finding people that made them feel safe. Like, as someone who struggles severely with their neurodivergency,
it's a journey. It's like you don't get to the mental health place. You go through a mental health process. Where at the end of the road, it might be, something different that you were looking for. And there are tools that is not only the physical things, is not only your mental health, there are other things, and you need tools to address those different situations and those different aspects. And for me, it was also a time of discovering even from the simple things and giving myself the chance to open up to that. For example, meditation, I was like, come on, that's so idiotic. It's like, come on.
Sit in silence.
But there's different types, in my case, what worked is this music that was scientifically developed to work in a particular frequency that calms you and helps you, sets your mind.
About red noise?
No, it was actually music.
Oh, okay.
And it was mostly, melodic. It was mostly music. There was some singing, but it was more like a humming. It reminded me working with my bees as a beekeeper. And then I realized that the bees, when they're flying with the air, they're humming at a particular frequency that calms the beekeeper. That was like incredible. So even in nature, there,
it's
certain frequencies
they know
do work with your state of mind.
Yeah,
that has been proven scientifically.
Well, binaural beats. Yeah. Binaural beats.
Exactly. Yes, that's the name of that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the name of it.
Yeah.
It did work for me. I don't know if it works for everybody, but my meditation wasn't like, okay, let me sit down, put my mind in blank. No, my meditation was like, let me listen to this music, and then my thoughts. It's almost like a rewiring of like the switches in my brain.
Well, yeah, kind of like, my brain is a ball of yarn, right? And then it's like when I get to a place of calmness and everything, I can take that yarn to weave and create and everything like that. That makes sense. It's not tangled anymore. I make the picture. But
for some people, it's journaling. It's like taking all those thoughts, putting them in paper, and somehow that helps. Yes, that helps them to rearrange things. Look at it a different. I tried that.
I do lists sometimes, but that still stresses me out.
Yeah, I tried that, but I felt like the commitment to do it and like the heaviness of having pressure to do something. And then I tried. I was looking at the side effects of some of the medicine, the Zoloft and all the medicine that I was taking.
I think I did like Wellbutrin, Zoloft, and then like Lexapro or something. Yeah.
And my doctor told me that for some people, especially young people, starting to take that medicine early on can have side effects with your liver. So a good psychiatrist is going to, at least disclose those things to you.
1,000%.
Yeah.
When I was 9, they put me on Paxil, which is for OCD and stuff like that. But my mom had this mom sense, like her spidey senses were tingling because she was like, why is my 9-year-old a zombie right now? This isn't normal. My dad was very much like, the doctor told her to take it. We need it. Anything's better than her crying. You know what I mean? So my mom kind of like played the trump card and was like, no, I'm not. I'm taking her off of it. 2 months later, it was taken off the market to be re-released to people only 18 and up because like they had a bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds kill themselves because it was one of those things that our brains weren't chemically prepared for that amount of change. And if you were past that threshold of depression, it was just going to push you off because it made the dark thoughts worse. I don't know about for you, but like for me, I got to a point where like you said when with sleeping was the only way you could disconnect and everything like that. And I was in talk therapy. I didn't have a psychiatrist, but I was going to like a GP that was affordable through like Reagan Medical or something like that. And they knew I was going to trauma therapy, so they felt comfortable with prescribing me Klonopin, which is like a Xanax. It's an anti-anxiety medication. Well, if you give someone who spends their life worrying about what other people think a drug that turns that off, see how fast they get addicted to it.
Okay.
Because that relief that washed over me of, it let me get tired and it let me sleep, which I was having insomnia to the point where I was sleeping maybe 2-3 hours at a time and just waking up. But if I took a Klonopin in the morning when I was freaking out, I was able to, at that point, feel like this heaviness and like be like, okay, well now I can finally like let go and go to sleep. And then shortly within a few months, I was like, oh, I'm going to the store. Better take a Klonopin so I don't worry about what person in aisle 3 thought about my shoes. Like, it just didn't make sense. I realized early on that I needed to not be on this medication because like the Band-Aid thing, it was just gonna cover it up. And I was just, once that was taken away, I'm still gonna have this gnarly wound because I wasn't treating it. I was just covering it up. And so that was like 6 months into me dating my boyfriend now. I had to call him while he was at work, and I was like, I think I have an addiction problem. Like, I say that because I knew getting off of it was going to be a problem. Okay. You know what I mean? Not because it made my anxiety worse, because I was like, well, if I'm out of it, what am I gonna do?
Yeah, what's gonna happen?
And I didn't want that life for me. There are certain people that need it. There's stuff that has happened to them, or they are chemically wired to where they aren't getting what they need, so it has to be chemically provided for them. That is 100%. I'm a case-by-case person till I die. There is no outline for any of this. But for me, I wanted to experience an unfiltered happiness. I didn't want to have something amazing and be in this moment and have it be fogged with the only reason I was able to be present was because of this drug. Yeah. So the goal for me outside of acting and being able to freely create and be financially just independent based off of my thoughts would be to be mentally independent for my thoughts and not have it be chemically maneuvered or altered by outside sources or people's opinions. Yeah.
Now, for other people, there are other tools.
I am not your hiking friend. I am not the person you call where you're like, do you want to go on a walk? Like, no, I've taken enough steps mentally today. You know what I mean? But what I did realize is that I was lying to myself about, like, I'm not this, like, what is it, Legally Blonde? Or this sounds crazy, but, like, Reese Witherspoon, Queen, and Jenny Coolidge. Reese Witherspoon's a princess. Jennifer Coolidge is the queen of that movie. But no, the whole she's on trial. This trainer's on trial for murder, and she's like, it's impossible. Like she exercises. Exercises releases endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. Happy people just don't go around killing their husbands. So it's like, that is so true. Like, because with a theater company, Vernal and Sear, I might have butchered that. I'm sorry, Aaron Boswell is my movement teacher that I've started taking an movement class. It's for theater and actors, but I think it could be for anyone, right? So it gets you out of your head of making the weird choices. Like everyone has seen Elaine in Seinfeld and the weird dancing that she does and everything like that.
Yes.
Like I've realized through the movement class, I never gave myself permission to just like, I say sorry for existing. I'm in line in front of you and I feel like you moved up too close to me. I'm going to apologize for being in your way.
Okay.
So this is taking that out, right? So for me, one of my tools that I've realized that really works is doing stuff that makes me uncomfortable. Not uncomfortable, not safe, and not that I can't, like that something bad's going to happen, but uncomfortable is you've never done this before. You're going to look silly. This is going to make you feel weird, but you're going to feel more whole afterwards. So I didn't like moving around people and taking up space and dancing and everything like that. It's not even a dance class. It's a movement class. So like, being able to make the decision to thrash this way, and then when you have to float, it like having to move super slow and intentional, like realizing like, whoa, that's what my wrist feels like and everything like that. Discovering myself has become such a tool, and like its own addiction is like finding my happiness. So like I think if people, including myself, rephrase it as to like I want to find my success, I want to find the next thing, like that car is going to go in a junkyard when you die, or to whoever you leave it to or whatever, but like the whole like idea of like what do I leave behind is like, if you leave peace of mind for someone that is like, oh, I can be myself because I saw them be themselves and they were so happy, you know what I mean? So the tools for me is it helps being a people pleaser because I can carry that into not caring, As weird as that sounds, like I care so much about making other people happy that I need to not care so that someone else that cares too much it will start to find they're happy. And eat like cooking, if you find something that you like to do and just invest in that in yourself, that bit of happiness, something that you can choose to do for yourself. There what is it, crocheting has become big for people. Like do that for yourself, or because meditating is great, but I haven't gotten to the point mentally where I can sit still and do that, but I also haven't put in that time. It's a goal, right? So like I did a film a while back, probably like 4 years ago now, called Authentics, and it was for a nonprofit called Smart Recovery, and it was a rehabilitation, cognitive science-based rehabilitation. So if you had a heroin addiction, if you had a coffee addiction, if you had an alcohol addiction, we can help you is their kind of thing. But let's figure out why your brain is responding to this. Why does your brain like cocaine so much? Why does your brain like this so much? And figure out what can we replace that with that will benefit your life and make you grow and, have purpose. So like the one huge tool outside of, obviously everyone's like, make sure you drink enough water. I will deck the next person that tells me to drink water because like we get it. Like, our bodies are made of it. But for tools, I think for me, and I don't know about for you, they change every day. Like how I'm feeling, going in the kitchen, I might not have the mental space. So what other tool can I use? All right, can I brainstorm? Can I make a list? Can I do this to feed that part of my brain that makes me feel useful and everything like that? One of my biggest tools has become making myself uncomfortable in healthy ways. Yeah. Last summer, I jumped off like a 40 or 50 foot cliff into the water because I was like, you're scared of heights. There are kids doing this. Like, do something that makes you uncomfortable and makes you feel like you lived. Like, I'm so tired of living, but it's under this umbrella of societal expectations. I want to get wet a little while, every once in a while, from my own mistakes, and then maybe come back with insight. But I can't do the things that everyone else does, like medication and everything like that, because I know I'm replacing things that I know I can fix.
Yeah.
There's no cure for autism. There's cures for symptoms.
I see it, for example, in your life with the joy of cooking.
Yeah.
And I've seen you doing it more and more.
Yeah.
And I've seen you try things and discover things.
Yeah.
I see, sometimes like taking a class on painting. It's not because I'm seeking to be a painter.
Yeah.
It's just I'm looking for the sources that help me to be creative.
Yeah.
I discovered that when I'm not working consistently, it triggers back my anxiety, my depression. And the source of that is finding validation in what I do and what people think of me when I produce.
Right.
And it's not a healthy concept of productivity. It's a dependency because my validation comes from that.
Yeah.
So what I'm experiencing now is I'm going to be productive for a better reason,
Yeah. No, for sure. Like I said, there's certain projects I won't do if the passion isn't there, like that. But whether it be the people involved are doing it strictly for validation, and that's become a turnoff to me, because I'm not doing it for notoriety or for people to know my name and everything like that. I'm doing it so that the goal is for me is to never get to the point where I have so much money that I'm like, it's not enough. Like, yeah, I grew up with a twin sister, and I'm gonna air it because he doesn't have social media. My dad compared us a lot and made us compete a ton. So I grew up not with a camaraderie and a companion. I grew up with a competitor. So it's carried into my adulthood of, she's doing this, she's going to be better than me. She's going to be perceived as better than me. I got to do this. I got to one up, and I got to... What? That's my twin sister. We're supposed to be a unit, half of your DNA is my DNA. So if I don't like you, I don't like part of me, and that's messed up. Like, I want to be okay with existing with each other without this incessant need of like, who's dad gonna love more today? Yeah. And it goes into, it went into like how we engaged with friends. It was like, who are our friends gonna like more? Casey had all of these brains and is so into like her studies and was alternative and had all these cool skateboarding friends and everything like that. And I wore Hollister and like
double collared,
like ripped jeans, can't tell me nothing in my spray tan bed. Like, it was so different to a point where now we're struggling finding a common ground. And the common ground now is film, and I clean for her and everything like that. But even so, I don't want our relationship to only be based off of like an exchange, of a monetary exchange. I work for you, so that's the only reason we have a relationship. She's a writer, and she's written some shorts and a feature and everything like that. She does some stand-up comedy, which I admire because I'm super funny. Yes. But I'm also terrified of public speaking.
Wow.
Like, so I have this thing, and you'll see me like holding my hands or doing things like that. So I have a thing where my hands will shake when I'm doing something I enjoy. That's fucked, right? So right now I'm having a great time. But you wouldn't...
It's like, how are you doing?
No, this is good for her.
Yeah.
But I miss opportunities because I'm worried about the weirdness and everything like that, or we won't connect because of our past of like stuff's gonna get weird, and I don't want that. I don't want to be like constantly feeling like I need to produce to prove that I'm worth it because that's how we were raised, Yeah. Like up until like 5 years ago, I was still like, yeah, I still hold the fastest mile time at my middle school. Not even high school, dude. Middle school. 6:51. But like that shows how deep that production over value goes. Like I want to produce happiness for myself and for the people I care about. That's where my value should come from. And everything else is just icing on the proverbial cake. But like, I think that I got to where I am today by slowly, kind of like the whole Shrek thing, like I'm an onion, you know, just peeling back the layers and crying a lot and getting through the tears and cutting people out and, you know, just taking the whole idea of what should be and turning it into what I truly want it to be the best version of myself. And that's going to look different for everyone, no matter who you are. Like, be the most authentic version of yourself. And for me, I was amazed at what started to happen when I started like removing the filter of like the what do they think, you know, because who are they? Who are these people?
Sometimes it's an imaginary.
They are imaginary. Like it, you know, if it's
that imaginary could be a construct of what we think of others.
Like we were saying earlier before we were even recording was like the idea of like making the assumptions for the people like that you're giving yourself too much credit then. Like I have to check my ego because I have no idea what people think, and all of a sudden I have the confidence to decide when I don't own mirrors in my house. You know what I mean? And the instant gratification and the validation that other people give us, we will never get if that's how we're doing it. Because like you said, physically, people might not be able to see, or there are people that go on like these giant weight loss journeys and then they get defeated because they're seeing something that's not conducive on the scale. And I'm like, muscle weighs more than fat.
Exactly. Yeah, I discovered that.
Like your brain is it's the strongest muscle you have. If you do not have your brain, you can't lift a barbell. So what do these gains, they're not going to do anything for me if this isn't good, you know? But the reason that this is good sometimes is because I'm doing this. So it's weird, right?
Yeah.
Finding that
same
balance.
with, you talk about the brain, and I also consider like the gut health. I never, look into that, but now more and more I'm understanding like, whoa, we're so much what we eat in the sense of...
Because you said your dad...
Yeah, because my dad went through this process where they were testing for everything. And one of the things that they found is that
the yeast
in the intestinal flora
yeah.
really messes up with your neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
And who would think that there's a relationship of like what's happening here to what's happening here?
Like, yeah.
But when you crave for chocolate, when you crave for this substance, the coffee and all these substances, it doesn't necessarily have to be drugs.
Yeah.
When you crave for these things, there's a connection there of how they make you feel to what is the health benefit of it,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
I did discover that and I implemented, tools that will help me conquer those cravings and those things.
Exactly. So for the longest time, part of one of the symptoms of my anxiety and my depression and everything like that, I got down to 85 pounds when I was at my lowest, and I was 21 years old at 85 pounds. And I got that way because anxiety even started affecting my ability to eat. I was in the hospital a bunch on and off when I was in my early 20s medically for my stomach. One of the worst times was I had gone 10 days without eating because every time I did, it would come back up. My body was literally rejecting everything I put into it because I was in such a bad environment and in a bad relationship that it was nothing. I was the weed that got picked and left in the sun. You know what I mean? We didn't get repotted. We didn't get nourished or anything like that. We were at the point where death was imminent, when you get that low. And I realized that as someone who loves to cook, what?
Yeah.
One of my biggest escapes was gone. I wasn't able to eat or cook for people and everything like that. And I wasn't able to exercise or do sports, which I love to do and everything, because my self-worth and my value was so entangled up in keeping other people happy and everything like that, that I almost became non-existent as a person. So the whole idea of the spoon theory of giving out your spoons to people, but at the end of the day, making sure you have at least one spoon to feed yourself. Knowing that, okay, this interaction, I start the day with 10 spoons, and this interaction takes 3, this 2, but at the end of the day, I at least need to have one. And I was at a point where I had absolutely 0. Every day. And I realized the other day, through making, it sounds like preachy, but making healthy choices and everything like that, and I might choke up a little bit, but I hadn't seen a weight over 110 pounds on a scale. And I don't know, since I graduated high school, I graduated high school at 140 pounds. I was athletic. I was super happy. And I let other people dictate my worth. My ex's mom came up to me and literally put her hands on me and was like, you're going to have to start watching yourself because of my weight. And then that depression kicked in, and I got to where I was 85 pounds, and it was like, you're not big enough. That's gross. You're not this. So my worth literally almost killed me because I was so concerned with what other people felt. And I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay talking about it now because I don't want people to have the wool pulled over their eyes about who I am as a person. Yeah. Because I don't want people to ever feel uncomfortable sharing who they are with me. You know what I mean? If someone has a truth that they need to tell me, if I can be that person, even if it, because of my empathetic nature, even if it ruins my day, I know I've done the work to have kind of an iffy day if that person feels like they were seen, But that being said, I then have to go into a little bit of self-care mode and do something or be around someone to raise me up to counteract that. Yeah. And it's finding that circle of people you can create with and communicate with to be that, that fluctuating, graph chart of emotions in your life of okay, I'm here, but where's that line? Where can I go? There's people along this line that will meet you at certain instances to where you can feel that that release and that safety without producing anything, your friends that you can just hang with and both be on your phones or having the TV on, that's a tool. People aren't tools, but they are, because you're a person that created the tools. Yeah. And so some of those tools can be oh, I have to go hang out with this friend because they're introverted, they're quiet, they're this, they're not going to ask anything of me and everything like that. And so another tool for me is seeing and knowing the people that will feed what I need after moments of sadness or trauma or just any sort of emotional exhaustion or turmoil of okay, how do I get back to neutral now? Because I want to get to a point where it's not affecting me as much. But again, I met a firefighter that said that the day that they find a body in a house and it doesn't affect them, that's the day they quit. And wow. I want to just in normal life, I don't want someone to come up to me and tell me this super traumatic thing and I'm already so spent because I haven't taken care of myself that I don't give a shit. Yeah. I want my legacy is for people to feel seen. Yeah. And if I'm not able to do that, I don't see a point to me.
Yeah. And I can attest to that. I just remember now in that comedy sketch that we did.
Oh yeah.
I had to make it look like it was date-like. you know,
Yeah.
but it was completely dark.
Yeah.
You know, at night.
Yeah.
We were
The
at
lighting was beautiful.
At this coffee shop, and I was so stressed. We already had set up a bunch of things, even shot a couple of scenes, and then you came.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh no, now she's here. And like, I was so stressed and like, what if this doesn't work, you know? And it wasn't until now that I realized, but you saw me. But you saw me not in the stress full of the moment. You're like, whatever you need to do. And I felt like, you know, I felt like this release of like, I'm not stressed anymore because, you know, she understands I'm doing like my best, you know, and she didn't ignore me and she didn't come out like, oh, why is, you know, let's go, let's do this. And it was like, okay, I just realized that like the importance of like, you saw me and you valued me, you know, and I, when you came in, you met my kids, you know. Sophia was like, is Haley coming? Like, no, she's rescheduled. Is she coming today? No, is she coming today? So there's something very special about you, and I really want to acknowledge that. You saw me, you saw my kids, you see so many people around you, and you know, it's almost like past the appearances and past the difference in beliefs, in I don't know, in how we look or different things. Mm-hmm. And I think more of us as artists, as filmmakers, as actors, we need to see audiences and people for who they really are.
Oh, without a doubt.
We're telling stories either from somebody's writing and ideas.
Yeah. But
it's our voice that is coming through. Mm-hmm. And our voice is the way that we tell people we see you as well.
Exactly. Like, I think that's, you know, especially with kids. I mean, you brought me into your home and we all ended up eating breakfast and talking. And then, like, poor Lucas is sitting next to me like, is anyone going to tell me who this person is? You know what I mean? And I think coming from someone who, all of my siblings played sports. And when I decided at like 12 or 13, I didn't want to play travel softball anymore. My sister still was, and she played high school softball and everything like that. But there wasn't a replacement for me as far as like an interest or a hobby that they found. So whenever I see kids, I never felt like I got my weird or my any sort of alternative interest nourished, mm-hmm. right? Or acknowledged, so that like when first time my dad saw that I did art was in my early 20s, and he was in my room and he looked around and I had a bunch of just paintings and random shit up on the walls, and he was like, "Where'd you get all this?" I had done every single one of those paintings, and he had a moment where he sat there quietly and he just kind of was like, if I had known that was in your brain, I would have done something about it. I never want to have that with a kid like that. If I would have known, you could have asked at a certain point when I wasn't doing everything the other kids were doing, because there have been so many moments where I have needed, but also didn't want, someone to ask how I was doing or just provide a sense of acceptance for the fact that I wasn't doing well. And I think that if I can navigate these waters in a way that like at least brings some sort of relief to people, and
you can be surrounded by people and still feel alone.
Oh, yeah, like Garden State. Do you remember that Zach Braff movie?
Yes.
Where he is standing, is like stagnant and almost like a Times Square, I think, type of situation. And people are moving and moving and moving. And he is just there. And like for the longest time, I felt like I was just, like life was happening, but I wasn't doing anything to move it along. And like, even with my body and face dysmorphia and like the fact that I didn't own mirrors for so long, and like if I did have a mirror, it was so people didn't think I was weird. Like I had a mirror that wasn't a mirror. Wow. You know what I mean? Like it was like a window that was cut and made into a mirror, so I could never really get a full body shot of myself. Like I was literally getting like this much of my face at a time. when I was a kid, cooking, right? I wanted to just like that. Like I was so good at cooking. I was good at science and history and doing certain things. It's like, or I would ask like, why didn't you help me with this or this? Because you were strong. You're always fine. You did good. Like, so, okay. So the kid that's doing good still can't get acknowledged or nourished. You know what that does to that kid as an adult? They don't matter. They're not going to reach out when they need help because they're supposed to be fine. And so even as an adult, I had times where I'd ask my mom, like, you know, you want to connect, like, why don't you call me? Why, like, you know, there are times where I would like to feel cared about or thought of other than, oh, you're answering my phone call. And it was like, well, you're strong. You're always fine. And I'm like, but that's where that type of thinking will equate to over years, someone not being fine. Because that, like, I can only go off of what life has given me for so long. My own stamina is gonna wear out. We're humans. Like, the whole idea of like, oh, I'm gonna end up alone and I'll be fine. You won't be, because you might have this whole idea, like, you might be secure in your solace, but we are not made to be alone. We need to be seen. We need to be loved. We don't necessarily need the whole idea of like hanging out with people all the time, but everyone needs a few people that they feel like they can get honest advice from.
Yes. Like, not only mental health, but life itself is like this turbulent waters, you know, this ocean of things that are surrounding you. And sometimes you get to see somebody struggling, but the mentality is like, you can only help them if you're in a position that you're safe, you know, from the shore, saying, like, hey, let me throw you a rope, because but sometimes you're inside the water, still in your process, still struggling. You can still be a help. You don't have to be in a safe place alone just to see somebody or just to relate to somebody. You know, I'm still in my process, but I feel these conversations, this openness is helping me, because as you talk, you also have that introspection that is helping you see like, oh, wow, this is awesome. You know, I'm not in the same place that I was before. And when I'm going there, I look back and say, I really don't want to go back to that particular place. So it helps me to reflect. But opportunities like this can also be help for somebody that is navigating this. You don't have to be helping people from the shore. You don't have to be standing in the ground to offer a hand. You know, you can still be in the waters. You can be struggling. You can be in this turbulence. But you can still be somebody that can... I was talking to a friend, the difference between inspiring and encouraging. So you can still be encouraging even if you don't feel like you're inspiring people. Like,
because, you know, at like the whole love languages, everyone has like physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, like everything like that. So even just saying like, hey, I see you doing the thing, like just keep doing the thing. Like, or responding to someone's Instagram story that posted this new thing that they're trying with not even like, you don't have to type anything. You know, the little reactions like, the clapping or heart eyes or fire emoji or whatever. Just even doing that instead of just doing the brainless scroll through, being like, oh, this person's trying this new thing and trying to like create a new channel. Like, high five, man. Like, good job. Like, that, even to me, if I post a funny video, because we are all guilty of like, let me see how my story's doing. Like, what's the engagement like? But if someone responds and they're like, that's super funny, I'm like, maybe it is super funny. You know what I mean? Like, we need that. But at the same time, we cannot survive on that. You know, we need the validation. You cannot survive on it because it's going to run out. There's a limited supply of validation each of us get in this world, because they're going to, if 10,000 people like your stuff, there's going to be 15,000 that think you're shit. So you can't, then if you're only focusing on the 15,000 that don't, what about that? You're spitting in the face of the 10,000 people that do. So like, keep your head on a swivel. You know what I mean? Because the constant like change of the tides and the turns of what the fads that go on.
Yeah.
Like, I look here and whatever was cool over there for 2 seconds, it might not be, So I can't look for validation in either, whether it be a certain type of style creation where it's like, oh, I need to edit this way because that video did really good. No, that video did good because the time, the place, and the audience it had. Yeah. Not because that's the new formula.
You can go viral today, but first of all, what is going viral really means? And then there is an emphasis that if you don't monetize from your virality, then it equates to nothing, And so that pressure of having to monetize is, in my opinion, is creating a whole new generation that is fixating with monetization through what they love to do, and that kills
crippling
the
creation.
passion. Yeah.
Like it really is, because you'll be like, oh, I guess I need to go get interviewed by some street photographer and make some viral joke about some random thing to get notoriety. Like, these are the only chances I have. Like, no, dude, you're worth so much more than someone else asking you a question. Mm-hmm. Like, I found myself, like I said, like, this isn't what I expected to be doing. Yeah. Like, I don't have people in my family that are in film. Mm-hmm. This is, like, for me, groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah. And the fact that you have been able to grow so fast and have these amazing opportunities at a rate that people who were almost like, formed to be that, like trained to be that, are not even getting it.
I see that, and it feeds into like the imposter syndrome, right? Where you're just like, I didn't put in the time. I didn't pay my dues. But like, no, I did. Though they were different dues. I was paying into a different system. Yeah. Like, I wasn't paying Juilliard. I wasn't paying an acting coach or a dialect coach or a singing coach or anything like that. Like, my payments were going towards, and it's not discrediting. It's not saying one's better than the other. But for me, what has worked is realizing that, like, this is going to sound so weird, but when I got into acting and people were like, how did you get over your fear of being on the camera, especially with your fears of how you look and everything like that? So I equated it as, because I'm a chick, I equated it as going to the gynecologist, right? Follow me. Literally, the lens for me was the doctor. It has seen everything. It has seen, and most of the time it sees the weird stuff, like the stuff that makes people uncomfortable. And so in my head, I'm like, all right, I can't do anything that hasn't been done before. Now you can accidentally, but I don't think those people that did something for knew they were going to do it. Yeah. Like, you're doing based off of precedent. And so for me, I realized, I was like, okay, like, no, like, I can be weird here and I can cry, like, especially as a sad bitch. Like, people being like, oh, it's interesting to see people cry on camera. Like, you're one of us. I was like, oh, cool. Like, an excuse to be my authentic self. And that became the appeal. That became that when you get bit by the actor bug, like the high. For certain people, it was like, oh, I got to wear this type of thing, or I got to do this type of thing. And everyone's different. And I mean, some are similar to mine, where it was like, oh my gosh, I can literally go cross-eyed and start crying and laugh and throw something at someone and like do what. And that's art. That's interesting. Yeah. Now I get to a point where, I'm not going to do shit just to do it. Some of the most uncomfortable scenes I've seen, for me, were all implied. It was what you didn't see, because your imagination is wild. And if you're not seeing something, whatever you create can obviously be worse.
And when I'm talking about monetization, I'm not saying that that's not good.
Yeah.
I'm saying is the fixation and the pressure that comes from thinking that that's the only way.
Yep.
Now, if you're able to freely create and people see the value on it, and it comes without the pressure to having to go to that place,
yeah,
it's amazing, because that validation doesn't necessarily come not just for the views, but for how do I monetize. So even if I had the audience, even if I'm reaching out to people, but if I don't monetize, then I'm not doing anything that is worth. So that's the pressure. I'm totally pro like monetizing from the content that you're making.
100%.
In light of what you were saying, is when it becomes a pressure that is not natural anymore.
Yeah.
That it takes away from your passion because that's only the focus and what you care about.
Right. And for me, I think I'm kind of straddling this edge of, I know that to stay relevant, you do need to create, right? But I do also, on the other side of that, know that because people go viral over one thing, know that I can give myself a break.
Yes.
I can take a break, because what if I take 2 months to myself, and then, or like you, 2 years off of social media to yourself, and then first thing that I produce for myself after that break is what pops it off.
Wow.
Then
Yeah.
I did myself a service by taking that time. But I mean, I think it all comes down to just, I guess, coming to terms and understanding that like all of this is a gamble. And the only thing that like for me that I'm not willing to gamble on is my happiness. So I refuse to do something that's I'm going to get in my car and have regret over that, that I said yes because I wanted someone to like me, or I said yes because of a paycheck.
So Haley, I know you as an actress. I'm starting to know other sides of your personality and what you do and the things that you like and the food. Not until recently we were discussing about films and stuff like that, and I was wow, Haley has a lot of context when it comes to like films and understanding and watching. But came to the realization of like the potential that you also have to write. Write your own stuff or like create your own stuff. Now, in your future projects, what's coming up with you? Do you see yourself also writing your own, producing your own stuff, like directing? Where do you see yourself going forward?
I definitely see myself in a more creative role. Like acting is creative, like it's amazing. There's something different about creating an actual character for someone to play, rather different than getting a character for you to play. I definitely see myself writing a bit more. I don't have as much screenplay experience and actually writing dialogue and everything in that regard, but as far as like stories and ideas, like I'm your guy. Like I have weird ideas and stories that I want to create and everything like that. There's some projects we have coming out that I think for me is more, I'm taking on more of a experience to get more knowledge in the producing side of things. So I think it's important to have projects that you might not necessarily be as involved in, like the script writing process or like the idea passion person, but like to have like a business idea side of things, because you need that for film. Whether it be with distribution, finding funds to make your film and everything like that. So getting experience with that is something that I've enjoyed. But when it comes to creating my own content, like I'm getting motivated by my circle of people, because we have a few short films that we're doing. My friend Victor Rivera and me and him and our friend Tony Reams, like we have some stuff coming in the works that's like more of a kind of like a creature short, but it's mental health, cool. So like let's do horror, but also like make it mental. And so have fun with stuff like that. And I have some stuff feature wise that I was a lead actor in that'll be coming out. That'll be cool and everything like that. But for me, as far as like projects, I want to have my first art show soon. I want to get my art out there. So I think one of my big kind of checkpoints in my brain is to have a space in my home set up to where I feel like I can freely create, kind of walk away from, go back to, and everything like that. Because part of my neurospiciness is I need clear space if I'm just living in it. I can't have clutter, like, you know, so there, it needs to have its own area. But yeah, anything to just get whatever, I think it sounds weird, but to get whatever colors and shapes in my brain on paper, and just kind of like turn it into a track, and connect with people that are also doing stuff I wouldn't think about.
Yeah.
Like that's the goal for me, is like these next few years I want to just cast an even wider net of creatives that are doing something different. Because even if you have a core group of people that you work with, that can get stagnant just naturally, because we're all the same people, and I go out of my net to kind of like when like for me, cooking, like if you go to a new country, which I don't have a passport, but the theory is you go to a new country and then all of a sudden it's influencing your cooking. Or for art, like, oh, I went to this museum and now all of a sudden I want my life to be that. I want to, with people, places, things, okay, this is going to influence my art. Oh, I can make a short film out of this. Or, oh, like I tasted this thing, now I want to recreate it. Like every facet for me is just become this obsession with self-discovery, you know?
Yeah. No, I can see it, and I can definitely, if anything, encourage you, because I see you writing, I see you creating like super interesting things coming from your experience, and beyond that,
poetry.
Yeah, and beyond that, with the art that you're producing, that is not necessarily acting, but just like that people can see visually what you can permeate in like the different explorations that you're doing. I know that this has been a very interesting conversation.
I know.
This has been, to be honest,
all over the
honestly, like this has been one of my favorite interviews so far, because of your openness, your honesty, the generosity of opening yourself, the things that we have discussed and that I can find, connection with. And I think other people will also connect with that, with the authenticity, or if anything, at least the openness. And I know people might want to reach out to you. I know you're active on social media. How can people know more about your work, who you are, how they can connect with you?
First of all, you'll never truly know me. Sorry, I'm just kidding. No. So as far as like social media, I just got back on TikTok because I was tired of being the person that was like, and did you see this reel? And they were like, it was a TikTok first. I'm like, okay, I'll go. So I'm back on TikTok as like, it's just at Haley, HALEYN, Leary, LEARY. The N is for my middle name. You can guess what it is. I'm a white girl born in the 90s. It's Nicole. And then for Instagram, it's just Haley, HALEY _Leary, LEARY. I post a lot on my Instagram stories just because I have to think about it less. It's more impulsive and not curated like a post should be or whatever. But yeah, that's where I should probably get a website, but no, I mean Instagram and TikTok. Facebook is more for like family and stuff like that. But if you do want to find me, it's just Haley Nicole Leary. But yeah, we're all family.
That's awesome, because I know that as much as we understand the implications and the dangers of, again, putting our value into social media, we also identify the potential for growth, for interaction, for community that can come from using these platforms. And also we understand that there are times where it's okay to pull out from that, and it's times where you feel the confidence to go back and be yourself and the things that are, others can find awesome as well.
Yeah. If you're waking up and you're scrolling and you're noticing the constant of like, I'm not feeling good, like, and maybe take a break.
Yeah.
Maybe literally take a break, because you're comparing yourself too much, and you showing up and doing the thing is enough. All this is extra. Like Bowie said, like everything else in life is a bonus. If I have food in my stomach, he was such a diehard romantic, like his wife and everything like that. Everything else in this life is a bonus. But like what what for me, I can't let be a bonus anymore is my own happiness. Like, that's not a bonus. That's a standard. I need to be happy so that others around me aren't just affected by my sadness, because that's not fun.
Yeah. But I once again, thank you for, accepting the challenge of coming. You're more in front of the camera all the time. I'm the one who's behind the camera. I'm like, I'm learning to do this thing.
It's so funny because like I see people doing stuff behind the camera, and like I don't know about editing and everything like that, and like I'm trying to get more into it's been 4 years since I've updated my reel. Like, my agency hates me because it's just such an enigma to me. So it's so cool to sit with you and have someone that is the tech side of things. And for me, I've watched enough like TV in the office where I'm like, oh, cameras are here, break fourth wall, break fourth wall, break fourth wall. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I'll play to what I know, right? Yeah. So I think for us, like, public speaking and speaking my truth is something that's vulnerable. This is vulnerable, so we we both
we did it.
We did it. But yeah, this is
Mom, no hands.
Yeah, we did it. I think the whole cliche of like do one thing a day that scares you can be played out. Don't do that every day. That's exhausting. That's not attainable. But every once in a while, do something that makes you feel uncomfortable, because that means you're growing. Like, yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I know through these conversations, through these interviews, there's a lot said, but I want to be, a channel to openness and to transparency, and for people to enjoy and learn, and everything is different.
Well, that's what I think is so great with the variety of people that you have on. Like, even people like me, I'm like, oh, cool, this gives me insight, and I'm less intimidated about trying something new. So what you're doing is taking the fear out of a new subject for people, and like, thank you for that.
That's awesome. So if you also find value in these interviews, in these conversations, share them with people that are also going to get something special. And don't forget, I'll see you in the next episode of Beyond the Scenes.